Welcome in. It's been a while. This is the Illinicast. I'm Austin Berkland alongside Sonny Verma, and we are the Illinicast, part of the Armchair Illini Network. And we could not be more excited to be back. Sorry, my
Do we
basset
have
hound
another
Riggins
co-host
walked
coming on?
in. No, it is my dog Riggins. He is in here, but hey, he's a pretty good dog. So we have a Illini roster that is pretty much almost set, and we're going to talk about that. But first, Sonny, how are things going with you? It's been a while.
It has been a while. I apologize for that. Obviously, thank you for all the support that you guys have given me on the other channel, Locked On Illini. Things are going great. We doubled our audio downloads from yesterday, so thank you so much. Obviously, turning out daily content there, but I miss this. I miss Illinicast and kind of interacting with the comment section, which hopefully you guys start asking us questions a little later. And Austin, I see you have a brace on your arm.
Yeah, I was on the Mechanical Bull at PBR Bar in St. Louis. Went to the Cubs Cardinals series in St. Louis. Didn't go well for the North Siders. And then it went even worse for me whenever I went on the Mechanical Bull. Fell and I broke two bones in my hand. So that is the latest on me. So I've been trying to figure out the world one-handed. At least I am left-handed, so that's nice. That I don't have to worry about writing left-handed and all of that. I'm already a lefty. So yeah, just trying to figure out the world in with one hand. And so yeah, that's the story of my life recently is watch out when you're on the Mechanical Bull. Let's just land on your shoulder. That's your lesson of the day. But Sonny, the Illini basketball roster we thought was set with Kasparas in the fold from Lithuania. But then there is talk of Will Riley, who is a 5-star in the class of 2025. He visited Illinois, and there could be a situation where he reclassifies to the class of 2024. This is a guy who can explode for 40 points. He's on Team Durant in AAU. And I mean, it just feels like a guy that can make an immediate impact, even with the amount of talent that Illinois already has. So this is a pretty crazy that Illinois could add a 5-star this slate on June 4th of 2024 or even later, because he does have visits set for Alabama and Kentucky. So Sonny, what are your thoughts on this situation with Will Riley visiting Illinois yesterday?
This offseason will not end. There's no taking a break anymore when it comes to college basketball. As you said, once we got KJ, and I'm just going to call him KJ because I've tried like multiple times trying to get that last name correctly, and I just botch it every single time. So once we got KJ, I thought, okay, our roster set. I like the way it looks. We got size, multi-positional players at almost every position. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's whispers about Will Riley and Orlando Antigua's relationship. And sure enough, we're the first visit that he has. And from what I've been reading, and the information I've been gathering, Kentucky looks like they're the favorite. But after that, we stand as good of a chance as anyone just because of that relationship with Orlando. And for that, it's just, I'd love to get him in 2025. If we got him in 2024, which is probably one advantage we have over Kentucky, we have a little bit more roster space than them. I mean, that realistically really raises the ceiling for the team next year.
I mean, we have Trey White, we have Ty Rogers, we have Ben Hummerkaus, and Morez Johnson as your 3 and 4 kind of options. But if you're talking about a pure 3 at 6'8", that would be incredible to add him. I think there's a chance that he could come in and play right away. He is that special of a player from some of the talent evaluators, if that's who you trust. I mean, if you get a guy like that to be the 3, to pair with Morez Johnson, who might be here a few years, and then you have Trey White and Ty Rogers on your bench, that is one deep team. And the ability to alternate with various matchups that the Big Ten will throw at you, especially with the newbies like Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Washington coming in, there's going to be a lot of different play styles. And Illinois right now is suited to play in a very various amount of play styles. And if you get them, that just that just takes that to a different level, to compared to where you already are at, that your ability to play different play styles. So this is very exciting. And I mean, if that in relationship with Orlando is the difference maker there, then wow. I mean, I was thinking like maybe the last guy on the roster you would be adding is like maybe a backup veteran kind of point guard, a guy from the MAC that just wants a chance to be on an NCAA tournament team, something like that. But a 5-star that could be a lottery pick in the 2025 draft if you were to reclassify, wow, that would be quite the coup for Brad Underwood and this team. And we we talked about the wings, like wow, what are we going to do about the wing? If you had KJ and you add Will Riley, that is a stud duo that not a lot of teams can counter with.
It's one of those things where, I mean, if you really think about it, now for sure, if Will Riley comes to Champaign, this statement's going to be true. But I think it's true regardless, even if he decides to not to come. And I think next year's team, the guys that we're going to have on the court, is going to be a more talented bunch than the one we had last year that made an Elite Eight run. That team, the team next year, is going to have, in my opinion, more NBA prospects on it. Now, just because you're an NBA prospect doesn't mean you're a better college basketball player. So that's different. But, Austin, I've told you, I think I'm very high on the team 2 years from now. Once Boswell gets another year, Booth gets another year.
Trey
But
White.
yeah, but see, I mean, you bring up Trey White, but my only thinking is if by some chance we get Will Riley and he decides he wants to commit and he wants to reclassify to next year, someone is not going to be happy. And Ty can't enter the transfer portal anymore because that portal is closed. But Trey White is one of those guys who a lot of people are very high on, including me. At least from the people I trust, they really like him.
I mean, he's a starter as of this moment, I believe.
You have him over Ty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I'm not so sure. I mean,
I think you have Kylan, KJ, Trey White. Then at the 4, you have Hummerkaus, and 5, Thomas Loth. I think you have to have that score in there.
I see. I think Ty and Brad have some sort of relationship now where Brad trusts Ty. Ty, like the rest of the team, is and all they can all play and they can play make. They can shoot their shots. Ty Rogers, I think, can excel in that sort of offense because he's not going to be counted on as much for offense. So, what Ty does really well, which is hit the boards, play some defense, just be a menace to the other team. I think he has to be starting, and that way Trey White can offer some offense on the second unit.
That's fair. I mean, you do have to have some sort of offense on the second unit, and I'm not sure exactly where that would come from if you have Ty as the 6th man, because he's just going to maybe add some booty ball element to the fold if he were to come off the bench. So you don't really have that pure electric score because Jake Davis, he's not going to play that many minutes as of this moment. Drake Gibbs has some question marks that he has to overcome. So I think this would you do make a case, but I think with the amount of athleticism that Trey has, I think that you kind of have to roll with that athleticism, even though Ty Rogers is the only proven commodity that's played in the orange and blue from this past year's team. So it's a fascinating thing, and I think training camp is going to be fun to watch. If they have any of those open up in practices, I can't wait to see the amount of competitiveness that this practice will bring. I mean, you're going to have Thomas Sloth versus Morez Johnson. You're going to have Kerry Booth rolling in there against Morez, against Ben Hummerkaus. I mean, these practices are going to be ultra fun, and I think that competition is going to breed to a lot of success regardless of who is in that starting lineup.
Like I'm just trying to think if I'm Brad Underwood. Obviously, it's a no doubter. If you can bring in a top 15 prospect, if Will Riley tells you that he wants to be an Illini, he's going to be an Illini. I can't imagine if I'm Trey White, I came to Champaign to try to get a bigger role, to play for a team that can contend and develop me as a basketball player. But I mean, if Will Riley comes here, he's starting, right?
For sure. I don't see how he doesn't. I feel like it would be Kylan, KJ, Will Riley, Hummer Kaus, and Thomas Loff. Wow. I mean,
Right. I mean, you're talking about talent on that basketball
Trey
team.
White and Ty Rogers would be sixth and seventh man off of the bench, with Dre, who would
Trey.
probably be one of the more odd men out at that point, which was crazy to think of how this offseason began, where we're like, man, maybe he's the sixth man on this rotation. Suddenly he's back to being the eighth man, which is kind of wild for a former 5-star-ish, 4-star-ish guy. Wow, that would be incredible.
But my thing is, Trey White's going to, like, Jake Davis is just not going to play. Hey, it's going to be Jake. Learn for a year.
I mean,
Get
he'll
bigger, work
basically
with
be
Clem.
a red shirt with Jason, essentially.
Right. But Brad's going to have to have some sort of conversation with Ty and Trey. In my opinion, I think that because Trey's not completely obligated to the Illini yet, he may decide at that point, hey, there's a 5-star they've already recruited over me. They've got Ty Rogers, and I don't think Brad is going to have a conversation with Ty Rogers saying, you're going to play limited minutes. And I'm not so sure if Trey's much of a 2 uh, or a 4. I don't think he's big enough for a 4.
Well, I
So
mean,
really,
you're not gonna play him in KJ's minutes either, because he's a big factor as well.
in my opinion, I think Trey is the odd man out. I think he's the guy who, again, I like him. And if Will decides to go to Kentucky, I'm very content with having Trey on this basketball team. But if I'm Trey's father, or if I'm Trey and Will Riley commits here, now I'm looking around at the locker room, and yeah, I would enjoy competition, but the downside is he's probably not going to be starting, and if he's not starting, then where is he going to get his minutes? Those minutes are going to be spot starting, maybe 15 minutes. And he's going to be a junior next year. He's not going to want to play 15 minutes. I think he's probably the guy who decides to go somewhere else. And all of a sudden, we're going to have 2 open scholarships again.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite the possibility. I mean, I don't know exactly how the transfer portal works exactly. If Trey's already signed an not NIL, and a national letter of intent, or a scholarship letter. I don't know how this is
So,
all
my understanding,
operating.
actually, I looked into this because for my Locked On Tomorrow, is um, with transfers, they sign a financial aid letter, but that's it. Nothing is binding until they show up for the first day of class. So that's why his path to transferring is much easier than Ty's.
I
Ty
mean,
basically,
that does make a lot of sense because Jeff Thomas did technically commit to Illinois back in the day, and then flew right back to Miami after signing that financial letter. So I think that, yeah, he would probably be out and be back on the open market, which would be one heck of a pickup for whoever lands Trey White this late in the offseason. But wow.
Thomas nailed it here. A coach's dream: 10 guys that can all play and contribute. The players will determine every day in practice who starts on game day.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
that is very true. I mean, you think of what transpired on this Illinois roster 2 years ago, when guys were pretty much like, as much as Brad Underwood probably hated to do it, he kind of guaranteed some things for some players. Matthew Meyer, Skyy Clark, Jaden Epps, like the list goes on of guys that were borderline promised some things, like, because there wasn't a sniff of competition, it felt like.
right.
And I think he's learned a lot, even with the way the transfer portal is operating nowadays, that you can't just give people all the promises in the world in an off season. I think this this roster would be Brad Underwood's just absolute dream come true of 10 guys that can all come in and play, um, to various degrees of success. And that's all a coach wants. And for Brad Underwood to be able to build this depth with Will Riley in here or not, it's just a testament to the roster and the trust that these players have in the system and in the assistant coaches and in Brad Underwood himself.
Check it out. Thanks for watching. Check it out. It's nice to see you. It's been a little while. He asks a fantastic question. What kind of NIL money can Will Riley expect? Obviously, we forked over some pretty good money to get KJ over from Barcelona. My thinking is if we didn't have the funds,
We don't even
Will
get a
would
visit.
already know about that, and he wouldn't have done the visit.
Yeah.
I think we probably put aside a lot of money for a potential AJ Store, a potential David Jones, and that would have cost us over 7 figures. KJ obviously cost us a pretty penny, but I still think we have some left over because he couldn't have cost more than the other two guys were probably budgeted for. So my thinking is Will and Orlando and the staff, they kind of know where each other stand on the NIL front. And if it was a number that Illinois couldn't possibly reach, I think Orlando and Will have a good enough relationship where Orlando wouldn't want to waste Will's time.
I also think that I know that he has that label of 5-star, but it feels like freshmen aren't getting the amount of NIL dollars that even a transfer would make. There are certain exceptions to that rule, like a guy like Cooper Flagg is a perfect example, like or AJ in next year's class that will garner some of those top transfer dollars that you can get as a freshman. But I think there is a tier down that Will Riley is probably in that isn't the top of the market. So I feel like Illinois will be able to afford him. And again, he would not have visited if these dollars weren't available. He would have visited, say, I don't know, Arkansas if Arkansas had some chicken money left over. So I don't think that he would have even wasted his time in coming to Champaign just for the visit if they didn't discuss dollars and cents.
I did want to mention, guys, we're at 895 subs. We're 5 away from 900. I know it's been a little while before since Austin and I have been able to come live, but please, if we can get 5 guys here to hit that like button, to hit that subscribe button, it would help the channel out so much. We're creeping close to that 1,000 mark, and that was always Austin and I our goal over summer. So if you guys can help us out, it costs you nothing, but it helps us out tremendously. Something else that's going to help us out tremendously, Austin, is the guy we keep referring to as KJ. I'm gonna try saying this again. Kasparas Jakucionis.
That sounded right. I mean, I've heard it said before, but I wasn't confident enough to say it for the first time on live YouTube. So I think you're
I
right.
botched it for 5 straight days on Lockdown Illini. Every single time I pronounce it differently, but it's because every time I watch tape of the guy, the announcer says his name differently. So I'm
Yeah,
literally waiting for the press conference where he's announced, and I can hear Brad say his name, and then I can at least confirm. But now that I've said it once, I'm just referring to him as KJ from here on out.
I know. We need Tim Sinclair back on because he is the pronunciation guru. Like, even if he hasn't seen the name before, he knows how to pronounce it right away, which is an unbelievable skill. Um, Yaku Shonis
That's
from
how
Jeopardy.
I'm understanding it too. That the J
Yeah,
is kind of silent, but again, I've been watching his games to try to catch up on what kind of player he is, and the announcers themselves are saying his name differently. So I have a very low level sense of confidence about me saying it correctly.
tough name to pronounce and a tough game to defend as well. I mean, I've watched the tape and you've watched the tape, and I can't wait for this guy to come in to the Big Ten Conference and to college basketball. He's a guy that can score the ball at all levels. He's 6'5". He can play some defense. It's not the most athletic defense out there, but he can play it. Kind of like a better version of Marcus Damask on the defensive side of things. And his ability to play make and pass, it's just unreal. And you pair that with Kylan Boswell, those two in the backcourt together with the creativity and the basketball IQ that both of them possess and the passing ability, it's going to be fun watching the ways that Illinois scores the basketball, because you have a guy like Tomislav down there who they can dish the ball to, and with the screens game that they have, and Trey White's arsenal that they can take advantage of. uh, I think this is just an unbelievable pickup by Brad Underwood. I used the word coup with Will Riley just coming on campus. This was an absolute coup, because when Igor Demon did not pan out, that was the little panic. But there was a guy that he was going up against, and it was KJ, and KJ smoked him a few times in head-to-head matchups, and was just unbelievable against some of the top talent in high school, with the overtime elite in the tournament. This is a guy that I am just salivating for. This is a guy that Illinois hasn't really had in its arsenal. Like, you remember Brad Zegas of Michigan
Mhm.
back in the day, Sonny? I see him, and I see a lot of similarities in the game, but it feels like KJ is way smoother and way more mature of his game, even more so than Brad Zegas, who was absolutely incredible for the University of Michigan under Beeline.
And yeah, our pick and roll game next year is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I don't think we're going to see the booty ball style of offense as much anymore, but Colin Boswell is going to be our point guard, but really only on formality because he's smaller than KJ is. We're going to essentially have two point guards, which is funny because last year we really didn't have one. But guys like Hummerkaus, even Ivisic, those guys are have to be ecstatic because backcourt of Boswell and KJ is going to give them open shots. And Austin, I had this thought the other day, and I wanted to share this with you. Like, there was a lot of panic during the offseason, if you're an Illini fan, just because it seemed like we were constantly striking out with getting what we wanted, like the big fish. And I talked about this, there's an alternate universe out there where we landed David Jones. That was the guy supposedly we were waiting on for a little while, but he
Hashtag
didn't.
mystery wing.
You're right, exactly. So, say we landed David Jones, and so we stopped pursuing all the other guys. There was no Igor pursuance, and obviously through Igor, we eventually found KJ. So, we think we have David Jones. We stop pursuing other players, and then the deadline comes, and David Jones decides he wants to stay in the NBA draft. Now, if you recall, I think the transfer or the draft deadline was on a Monday. No, on a Wednesday. It
Yeah.
was the previous Monday when KJ and Igor had committed to their teams. So, had we lost out or had we gotten David Jones and he decided to stay in the NBA draft, our team now would really be in a lot of trouble. So, it's something to think about that we could have had the 1B target of the offseason and somehow still been in a worse position today.
Yeah, I think the foreign market is going to be one that Brad Underwood uses as a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing. And as well as being the first choice. I think that those are the two choices for Brad Underwood with the foreign market is there's a guy like Igor, I want to get him. There's a guy like KJ, I want to get him. Or you look at Tomislav, who's still a hell of a good player. When Illinois saw that the market for NIL on big men were $1.5 million or whatever crazy figure it was, Tomislav was there, and he is going to be a great college basketball player. I mean, I was listening to the Sleepers podcast. No, not Sleepers podcast. I was listening to Jonathan Gavoni's podcast, and he was talking about Tomislav, how he thinks he's going to be a better college player than his brother, Big Z. He thinks Big Z is going to be a better NBA player, while Tomislav is the better college player. And me, as an Illini fan, that's music to my ears. I don't care about how they do in the NBA. Once they do great things in college, yes, it's a great thing, like I would assume in the NBA. But wow, just the ability of Brad Underwood and Jeff Alexander, who has got a lot of hell for his recruiting in the past, for him to be the lead dog on these foreign guys and to find the talent and to get the right connections around these players has just been unbelievably awesome to see. And I think this is a great thing for Illinois. I mean, you mentioned the David Jones situation, and I think that you got to be leery, pardon me, of how this all develops because there's a change. Like Ben Hummerkaus, he announced that he was coming to Illinois and withdrawing from the NBA draft, but there could be a guy that says from the Phoenix Suns, hypothetically, "Hey, we're going to give you a promise in the second round," and they may not draft him in the second round, but he gets that promise. Who cares who he transferred to? He's going to stay in the NBA. So this is something that all colleges need to be leery of, is to not take that transfer who's still in the NBA and make it the truth that it's going to happen.
And I think this foreign route is a path that Brad Underwood and the Illini can excel at. When you think of the 5 stars and the top players in the country, for the most part, they will still always go to the Blue Bloods because that's just history. That's just what happens. There's colleges out there. Illinois has a lot of NIL money, but there's still others that have more. And there's still more that come out that like bigger brands in college basketball that the average high schooler here is attracted to. It's playing for North Carolina is a big deal. Going to Duke is a big deal. We may think playing for Illinois is nice, but the average high schooler may not put us at that level quite. But with bringing guys like Ivisic, bringing in guys like KJ, if all of a sudden Illinois can show that we can bring in the top foreign talent and bring them into America, pay them well, because I mean those guys are being paid decently in their Euro leagues over there. So it's
I
not
mean,
like those
hell,
guys are coming
FC
cheap.
Barcelona, like that's
Right.
one of the biggest names in all of soccer, and they have some good basketball money as well. Like that's incredible that a guy playing for FC Barcelona who could have been playing with Luka Doncic 7 years ago or so will be playing in the league of the Big Ten, and it's just a new market for colleges. And Illinois took full advantage with Thomas Sloth and KJ.
And it's a market that's going to be there. So again, if we can show that we can develop a Visic, if we can show that we can get KJ into the NBA, Gonzaga's already doing this. Gonzaga's very good at finding European talent, and there's a reason Gonzaga is as good as they are every single year. I'm very confident that Illinois can match, if not exceed, the type of money that Gonzaga is able to come up with for these recruits. So I really think that we almost stumbled into, because again, we were going after Storr, we were going after David Jones, we were going after Igor. I really think that this situation is something that Illinois and Brad Underwood can seriously pursue, and all of a sudden, be one of the go-to programs for all the up-and-coming talent coming out of Europe. I mean, like you said, FC Barcelona. We all know Barcelona, right? Well, imagine Barcelona being a feeder program into the University of Illinois. Barcelona itself is buying all the youngest talent out there in Spain, in Europe. And so if all of a sudden KJ develops, then the coaches there, they're going to have a good relationship with Antigua, Jeff Alexander, our coaching staff in general. And the next guy up, who's 15 years old now, but in 2 years, KJ's a first round pick. Now this 15-year-old is looking to come into college. Well, we've already have that built-in relationship. And again, for a guy out in Europe, the name Kentucky doesn't mean anything different than the name of Illinois. So I think it's something we just have to take advantage of, and I'm kind of optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, AAU guys, like they know, you're right. They know Kentucky, they know Duke, they know North Carolina as the teams that send guys to the NBA consistently. With the European guys, they view it more as like a country. This country has sent so many players to the NBA. They don't really care the method that they go to. And if Illinois has that relationship with the coaching staff, the executives over there, and be like, hey, we'll pay them great. Just send them our way whenever they're ready to make the move. I mean, that's what sales is all about. It's about building that pipeline, and it's going to be so connections based. And Jeff Alexander, kudos to you. Wow. I mean, just unbelievable work this offseason, because there were moments in the early iterations of Brad Underwood with Jeff Alexander. Jeff, what are you doing?
Right.
Who are
A
you
lot of
bringing
people
in?
were questioning that.
Because it was Chester Frazier bringing in like the tough nosed guys like Amani Hansberry and Sincere Harris. Um, you had uh, Coach Anderson bringing in all the studs that you were seeing time after time. It's just incredible to see Jeff blossom and find his niche in the recruiting world. So that's been fun to see, even off the basketball court.
Jeffrey asks another good question. Any ideas on when we will know about Riley? Ty is still my dude. My thinking is it's up to Will. If Will wants to be a 2024, if he wants to reclassify, which honestly, like, why wouldn't he? If he's going to, oh, looks like we may have lost Dawson. All right, I'll just talk about it. If I'm Will Riley, no, he's back. Okay, there you are. All right. If I'm Will Riley, he's already old for his age because the schooling system in Canada is a little bit different. So if all these programs are offering you that much money, I don't see why he would try to stay in high school for one more year. So if he wants to reclassify to 2024, most of the guys on next year's roster, summer sessions are going to start soon, and you're going to want to be able to start playing with your teammates and just getting acclimated to the whole college scene. So in my opinion, Jeffrey, if Will wants to play in 2024, he's going to have to make that decision sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be July to figure that out at the latest. If he's just a fall semester guy that comes in right at the fall semester, I don't know how that all operates with summer workouts and mandatory workouts. I'm not exactly sure on the minutia of that, but it's going to have to be soon. I think that's why he's stacking the 24-hour visits on top of each other. Maybe spend a week figuring out the pros and cons and the dollars and cents, and then he'll come with his decision. So I think it's going to be rather quickly just based on his visit schedule.
Thank you for the nice words, Kirkland. Make sure you guys check out the boys' work at Armchair Illini. They're always churning out some high quality Illini content every single day. They're working very, very hard. What else we got, Austin?
We have some dates now for those great non-conference matchups, and that would be Tennessee, Alabama, and Duke. Let me get my strong arm going on my phone while I get those dates. But we see that Bama is going to be November 20th. Tennessee will be December 14th, and Duke will be February 22nd. That's an old school 2001 style non-conference matchup that Bill Self always loved to schedule. So that's a fun game to go possibly from like a UCLA game to Duke, from Big Ten to non-conference. That'll be exciting and fun. And then Bama and Tennessee, I'm glad that they're kind of staggered, because back to back makes it awfully tough in those tough environments, regardless if they're home or away, going up against those teams. So November and December are Bama and Tennessee, and then Missouri, of course, will be roughly around December 23rd ish. It's always the couple days before the Christmas holiday. So we have that, maybe one more big non-conference game that's yet to be announced. Who knows, with the way the staff is scheduling.
Yeah, I see positives and negatives to that Duke game in February. I think our team is going to be substantially better in February than our team is going to be in November and December, just because we're just the massive roster turnover that we have. The guys are going to need time to gel. So depending on where you expect this team to be, if let's say we struggle out of the gate, and this is a team that's kind of on the bubble, a victory over Duke that close to March is something that can kind of push you over the edge and into the in category. And again, I'd rather face Duke in February just because I think our guys will be more ready. But it's also in the middle of the Big Ten season. So it's like, it's kind of a distraction going out to Madison Square Garden. I think that's where the game is at.
Mhm.
Supposedly Duke wanted a game in that stadium, and that was the only date that they can get. So that's
They
why.
need every game close to Cooper Flag in Maine as they possibly can. That's why they're playing the University of Maine for Cooper Flag. I mean, that's their MO at the moment.
Well, I mean, if you get a guy in like Cooper Flag into your program, you do whatever you can to make him happy.
Maybe Illinois can play a game in Barcelona or something for KJ.
We got to wait another year or two, right, for one of those Europe trips. I think you were on that last time when we kind of discussed
Yeah,
this.
every 4 years you're allowed a European trip, but that might not matter if the entire roster is European.
Yeah, right. Jason says, I saw a pre-ranking that said Illinois is not even the top 25 to me. Yeah, most of the ones I've seen haven't had them in the top 25. Isaac Trotter just released one, I think yesterday or this morning, which had them at 24. And I think that's about right. I don't know
Yeah,
about
they
you,
were.
Austin. I
Yeah, they
think,
were.
go ahead.
They were behind in other Big Ten teams: Purdue, Indiana, and UCLA. Were the three teams above Illinois, which I can firmly see. Like UCLA is going to be a pretty great team. They have great athleticism. Purdue is Purdue until Purdue isn't Purdue, and then Indiana. Like they have all the great chess pieces, but you have Coach Woodson playing checkers with them. So we'll see how all of that athleticism can fall apart with Coach Woodson's coaching ability.
Yeah, I mean, if you put a gun to my head right now, and if we were making predictions, I would basically say I feel confident Illinois will be in the top four, maybe top five of the Big Ten. But at the same time, I expect us to be contending. Obviously the eyes are going to be on Purdue and see what that team really looks like without Edie in the middle. But Braden
They
Smith
have
could
another
be
7'3" guy coming in, and I saw him with the ball, and he is very coordinated. Looks like he can have an offensive game as well. So that's just who they are. Like we have linebacker U in college football, where guys just are bred to be NFL linebackers, and Purdue is 7'3" U apparently.
yeah,
That's
that guy. I mean,
the
he's
that's
still
the height of
skinny.
admittance.
He's still skinny. I think Daniel Jacobson, I think his name, or is
Yeah.
Nicholson, one of those. But in 2 years, I can already tell that kid's going to be super annoying and another, you know, guy that we got to worry about. But Avicic, isn't he 7'1"?
Yeah, so we actually have a piece that can go roughly against him. So that's nice at least compared to this year where you're like, Coleman,
Poor
go.
Coleman.
Dane Danger, go.
Actually, let's talk about that, Austin. It's been a while since we got on live, and so I don't think you and I have talked about Coleman Hawkins basically officially deciding to come back, but not come back, meaning to Champaign. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I can. It's been telegraphed for so long. I mean, everyone has pretty much said their goodbyes. You saw the graduation post where Coleman walks out of Ubben for the final time. Brad Underwood was at Coleman's graduation, so it doesn't feel like there's any ill will in those parties. It's just the fit, the timing, and everything just did not work out in terms of meshing Coleman Hawkins and Illinois back together again. Um, the pursuit of the five was stalling for Illinois, and I don't think Coleman even wanted a chance that he was going to play the five again in college
Right.
basketball. He wants to prove that he can be a four or maybe even a tweener 3-4, and that was not allowed at Illinois. Even with the addition of Tomislav, the timing just was bad. NBA wise, Coleman was going to wait till the very last minute for any possible promise in the second round, and apparently that never came. Because I feel like he's an NBA player. I really do. I feel like we'll see him 3 years from now in the NBA, and he'll be a bench piece, but he'll be a bench piece that's in solid footing on an NBA rotation. So it just didn't work out timing wise, but I do think that it'll work out for all the parties. It just stinks that the final visual in college basketball for Coleman Hawkins will be in an NCAA tournament somewhere, but he won't be wearing orange and blue. I wish that final visual was in that Elite Eight game where Coleman Hawkins could walk out with his head held high and he would walk into an NBA arena next, but it didn't work out that way. And Illinois needed some assurances at the four. They needed some assurances at the three. They had 8 guys to replace, which is absolutely hard in today's world of college basketball with NIL funds. So they had to disperse that money. They had to figure out some holes, and I think this was a situation that had to be done, as sucky as it is for Illini fans to see that visual that I was talking about.
It's unfortunate to say this because Coleman is one of my all-time favorite Illini just for his career track. Coming in as a pretty highly heralded freshman, struggling a little bit, but every single year you saw him get a little bit better. And I just don't know if we're going to see that type of college basketball player anymore, at least with like willing to stick around with one team. But I can't help but feel a little guilty thinking that Coleman Hawkins might have cost himself a chance to get drafted this year by being on the Illini last year. His skill set, he was completely selfless in what he did, playing center for us and basically, being bullied by all the Big Ten bigs in the conference. And I think that may reflect a little bit on the tape. I think if he were on a different team where he got to fully excel as the four, which is what he is, he wouldn't be contemplating this whether he needed to go back to college or not. Because, like you said, I think Brad and Coleman have a wonderful relationship. I think ideally both of them wanted Coleman to stay in the NBA draft and get drafted, but a two-way contract I think in the NBA is like $600,000. Coleman, by coming back, he'll get maybe 3 times that.
He wants a contract or NIL that tops Great Osobor, who got 1.2, 1.1.
Two. I think he was at 2 million.
2, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Big men were getting paid this
Yeah.
offseason.
Yeah.
So he wants something along those lines, which I can see him getting. I mean, that's the going rate right now, and Coleman Hawkins is the best transfer big in this cycle.
Yeah, the only question is what team's going to do it. Arkansas. I think I just saw Brazil is coming back to the team, so I don't know how much money they have left. Now, granted, they have a lot of money, so I think if Calipari went back to the Chicken Boys and said, "Hey, I need another 700 grand extra in my budget," they'll do it for him. But Kansas seems full. North Carolina now seems kind of full. BYU is just throwing major money around, but I don't know. I can't imagine Coleman would want to go play for.
Could you imagine that?
I'm trying to be respectful
personality?
here. I'm not trying to say anything, nothing against BYU, but I don't think Coleman is necessarily fit for that culture. Is that
I've
a clean way to say
driven
it?
through Provo on the way to Moab, and it does not scream Coleman Hawkins to me. It does not, just based on my drive through town to get some Dutch Bros coffee. So
Right.
I really don't think that Coleman Hawkins would be truly happy at BYU. But hey, if the Mormons are throwing around that money, then
Yeah,
go
exactly. I
take
mean,
it.
for $2 million, I'll go hang out in Provo for a year. It's not that big of a deal.
Beautiful sight lines, my goodness.
So again, I'm kind of curious to see, and I'm going to be tracking, of course, as I'm sure all Illini fans are going to be, to see where he ultimately ends up. But yeah, I know there's some Illinois fans who are still bitter that why didn't we wait for him? Why don't we just pay for him now? Let's just go into our budget. But I think Brad and Coleman said their goodbyes
Yeah,
like in a coaching player relationship, and it's one of those where, like you said, I like what Hummerkaus is going to be bringing to our team next year. And if it was a matter of, a couple months ago saying, hey, you can have Hummerkaus now for X amount, or you can play the waiting game, lose Hummerkaus because he's going to sign somewhere, and wait and see whether Coleman Hawkins is going to come back to college, play for you. Oh, and by the way, he's probably going to cost you 3 times as much.
yeah. I
I
mean,
understand the decision by Brad to go ahead and lock down his roster because, like you said, we had so many roster spots to fill.
yeah, I mean, and if Tomislav wasn't a thing because you were focused in on Coleman Hawkins, Coleman Hawkins wasn't going to come back to Illinois because
Yeah.
he doesn't want to be the 5 again. So I think that it just kind of ran its course in a very unfortunate timing. I just wish that in today's world of the transfer portal, I wish like guys would be asked who you want to represent in the NBA draft, where who the commissioner announces where they're from, because I feel like Coleman Hawkins would still say Coleman Hawkins from the University of Illinois, drafted 44th to the Washington Wizards or whoever it is. Like, I wish that could be a thing, because to hear Coleman Hawkins drafted by
Right.
from another college is such a weird thing. Like, it's almost like Jalen Hurts with Oklahoma and Alabama. I feel like Jalen Hurts it still was an Alabama through and through guy, but he just had to do it for his career to go to Oklahoma. And I'm sure he wished that he could have said, Roger Goodell could have said, from the University of Alabama, Jalen Hurts. Like, I wish that was a possibility in NBA and NFL drafts.
Awesome. Before we wrap up, there's another news story that went out today. I'm sure you heard Tim Anderson, the assistant coach on the Illini, went on to Stephen Bardo, friend of the program, his show, and he talked about how Skyy Clark told him one of his biggest regrets was leaving Illinois. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I can see it. Like, you're a freshman, you're immature, you see the writing on the wall that Jaden Epps was playing tougher than you, and that you may lose your spot as this highly touted player who was such an above the rim player whenever he was in high school up until his ACL injury. And when that hit, he was a very below the rim player. He wasn't as athletic. And I feel like he needed to reinvent himself as a player. And he wasn't patient with the process. And I think with the transfers to Louisville and to UCLA, I feel like he wishes that he would have just stayed home, developed, and been part of the winning culture that Brad Underwood built. I don't know if that Brad Underwood culture exists, if Skyy Clark is going through that mental and physical process, because he was such a vocal opponent of Brad at times, and his family was. So I think it was just a case of maturity. Like, Adam Miller had nothing bad to say about Illinois once his time. I mean, he's still in college, but now that his time is ending in college, like, so I feel like these guys who make these transfers, regardless of what program, Illinois or not, like, I feel like there are some doubts and some regrets on how these situations end, because you are thinking as a 19-year-old, and then you look back at yourself at 22, 23, in today's world of college basketball, and you're like, man, I wish I would have stuck that out. I went to a Louisville program. It was the most losing Louisville program in history of that program. I mean, it's I, I respect it, honestly. Like, that Skyy is going through this process of mental maturity, and that shows, and it's nice to see as a just a man, regardless of basketball.
I mean, I think it's more than words because of Trey White committing here. You
Yeah.
know, the fact that they were teammates last year, of course, Trey would want to at least have some sort of input from Skyy about what Brad is like, what Champaign is like. And the fact that he did commit here shows that, you know, this may be true. That Tim wasn't exactly, embellishing in any sort of way. Kind of like you said, Skyy, yeah, he had his issues, right? He played for 7 different schools in 7 different years. And in some ways, that is a red flag. I get it. But if I'm going to judge Skyy Clark on some of the decisions he made as an 18-year-old, as a 19-year-old, all I got to do is think back at some of the decisions I made as an 18-year-old, as a
Yes.
19-year-old. And all of a sudden, it's like, I get it. It's like, if I recall, it was mid-December and he was struggling, and there was, talk about him losing his starting spot. It's, you start thinking one thing, and maybe it might have been a rash decision. And I think ultimately, if Skyy was here, if he was on this show, by the way, Skyy, you're more than welcome to come on the show. He would say that he made a rash decision. And yeah, him declaring to committing to Louisville like minutes after Illinois lost their tournament game was kind of a jerk move. But again, I think that's just one of those moments where he could probably wish that he could take that back. And I mean, I don't know if it changes my it does change my opinion about him a little bit. Like I was really looking forward to UCLA coming to Champaign this year and the crowd reaction that Skyy Clark was going to get. If you're in that crowd, has are you still going to react the same way like before you heard this news?
I mean, too much has changed for Illinois. Like Illinois isn't still fighting to get out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Like that monkey's off the back. Illinois is an Elite Eight team looking for bigger things than to boo a player that was going to be now 3 years once that game hits of leaving the Illinois program. So it, it's not a same equivalency, but it's a lot like a lot of Cubs fans um, with Bartman, where in 2016, like in 2015 even, you made it to the NLCS. 2016, you made it to the World Series. If Bartman were to walk through the doors at Wrigley Field, I don't think there would be a loud chorus of boos outside of the few idiots that reside in Wrigley Field. There will be some boos from the idiots in State Farm Center once Skyy Clark gets announced by Tim Sinclair for that in that starting lineup. But I feel like time has passed enough, and too many things have happened with this Illini basketball program. Like, who's is there anybody still in the roster that would be mad at Skyy Clark? I don't even think so. I think it's
Ty,
entirely
right?
brand new. Ty,
Ty.
yeah. Like that is it. Like it's not like you have like this band of guys that's going to be like, "Oh, Sky's back. Let's get him." Like
Right.
it's there. There's been too much player movement. Too much has changed. Like I think it'll be pretty routine outside of the few idiots who are like, "Oh, Skyy, he's the guy that transferred out." Like I don't think that'll happen.
And it just makes me laugh again, just thinking about I don't know what the word is, like the circle of college basketball. Because if you recall, it was 3 years ago, we went after Kylan Boswell to be our starting point guard. He was a 5 star, and growing up in Champaign, we thought we were going to get him. He was out in Arizona, so Arizona was the favorite, and ultimately that's who he ended up going with. And a lot of Illini fans wanted Jeremy Fears then, and that's kind of where the the eyes shifted, at least to the fan base. And then there's rumors, not that I can confirm, but there's rumors that Jeremy was ready to commit, but the Illini were kind of lukewarm, didn't want to take on that scholar or take on that commitment right away. So little did we know, they knew, staff knew, Tim Anderson had Skyy Clark in his pocket. So once we hired him, Skyy was going to decommit from, I think he was committed to Kentucky
Yeah,
at the time. And so now here we are, 3 years later, and our starting point guard this year is Kylan Boswell, the guy that we had initially lost out in our pursuance of a point guard 3 years ago. So it's just everything's this life is a circle.
and Fierce's brother waiting in the wings in the class of 2025, where we thought, oh, we ruined this whole family relationship here as well, back whenever we weren't accepting the commitment of Fierce's older brother. So it is crazy how time heals pretty much all wounds. And again, Orlando Antigua was just freshly out at the University of Illinois. And now Orlando Antigua is going to be back on the sideline in Champaign. Just makes your head spin.
I'm actually curious, Austin. Speaking of fears, now that again, we haven't been on since this was announced. Jeremiah Fears, Morez Johnson playing for the under-18s, Team USA. Any thoughts on that?
They beat a team by 96 today,
I saw that.
um, which is just unreal. Shows the amount of talent that America still possesses. I don't know how it's going to work out in the real Olympics this summer with all the great international teams that are loaded up this summer. And Illinois and pardon me, the United States are going after a bunch of older guys like LeBron James and Kevin Durant to wrap up their careers in international basketball. But Morez and Fears together on a USA team together. That is the thing a lot of fans have dreamed about. Like how many years have we watched these America teams or McDonald's All American teams and be like, where's Illinois guys at? Illinois might have Illinois has two guys on that roster. Like just crazy where we came from, like as a program. Like even guys like Jeremiah Tillman who are like just missed the
Right.
team. We're excited about their commitment and upset about their decommitment. just crazy where Illinois basketball is at today, even compared to the early days of Brad Underwood and the late days of John Gross.
Yeah, I kind of talked about this on a previous episode of Locked On Illini. There's only 12 roster spots for that team, and Illinois has two of those players. And a lot of people right now, that's the only basketball that's on right now. You have the NBA Finals where there's two teams playing every 3 days. So if you want to watch basketball, if you're kind of, if you've got that itch, you're watching these under 18s. And when you have Jeremiah Fears, who had a fantastic game today, I don't have the stats handy right now, but Morez Johnson had a great year. What you're doing is you're introducing the future Illini to a national crowd right now, a crowd that's full of basketball fans. And in its own way, that's going to elevate the brand that is Illinois basketball. That just shows you that Brad Underwood is cooking right now.
And I mean, you think of how the Miami Heat was built, how the Golden State Warriors were built. It was with guys playing on the American team together and then being like, we should be teammates outside of this. There are guys like Jasper Johnson who are on the USA team, who is another 5-star for the class of 2025. And if he sees two guys who are gelling together that are both playing at Illinois, yes, I know there are going to be multiple guys who end up going to Kentucky or Arkansas once this is all said and done. But that's an opportunity to recruit some guys immediately and really showcase the power of Illinois basketball just within that one roster of guys already being like, oh, we're going to room together in Bromley or wherever it would be. Like, I mean, that's just going to be awesome to see develop. And if you keep getting guys in that roster and in that system with Orlando Antigua's connections and Tim Anderson's connections, my goodness, the sky is the limit for high school recruiting. But again, you don't want to fall into the trap of Calipari in Kentucky and relying too much on the 5-stars, because the transfer portal is still going to be a beast to contend with.
I mean, that'd be a good problem to have.
Yes, absolutely.
But you're exactly right. I actually completely forgot about Jasper Johnson, who's also on that team. Imagine they play different positions. So imagine if those three are on the court together. They're practicing every single day. And what if they have chemistry on the court? And if you have chemistry on the court, maybe, you're grabbing lunch together, you're grabbing dinner together, they're teenagers. At that point, Jasper may look around and all of a sudden, again, we already know Orlando Antigua and him are talking. That could be something that kind of pushes you over the edge and makes Illinois a serious contender. And, that's a really good point about, what that you just brought up. Potentially, we could have 3 players on this team.
Yeah. And then
out of 12 roster spots.
Yeah. Possibly a couple of McDonald's All-Americans next year, too. I mean, when is the last time Illinois can say that? I mean, you have to think back to even the Flying Illini days. I don't know if they had that. In 2001, I think they had one guy from Peoria. But, wow, this is unbelievable to even think about.
It's a good time to be an Illini fan.
Absolutely. And, I mean, still waiting on Franklin of Illini football, too. If that happens, then I will never see the trajectory of both women's basketball, men's basketball, and football all trending upward at the exact same moment. And it's a time where you have to be, with such divisions of financials and wins and losses, breaking up the haves and have-nots. And if Illinois can keep ascending in all three, then that's just going to keep Illinois in the precipice of being something special as an athletic program to help all the other sports out.
Yeah, right now, the whole college landscape is changing every single day. Like, they're already 3 steps ahead of what the public even knows about right now. So Illinois right now, as a brand, as a university, really needs to establish themselves as mainly a football. Let's just be honest. Football, basketball, obviously, and women's basketball. We need to show that we're going to be a big-time program, because there's going to be a lot of haves and have-nots in the future, and we want to kind of continue to place ourselves in the haves. Let's get to a couple comments real quick before we wrap it up. Austin, let's see. Check it out. It says Skyy just started a trend. Now everyone expects transferring schools because of the NIL and portal. Yeah, hopefully they don't leave halfway through the season though.
I
That's
mean,
not a fun trend.
I don't know if Sky started a trend. I feel like just the landscape was the trend, and Sky just took advantage of that, as do a lot of other guys. So NIL is always going to be a factor. I mean, Illinois can't be the ones that are complaining about that because we just got Marcus Damask from SIU who wasn't able to offer NIL. Ben Hummerkaus this year. I mean, Jake Davis probably is getting a little something more than he did at Mercer, even as the 12th guy on the bench. I mean, it's kind of incredible. So Illinois can't cry about it and take advantage of it at the same time. And the portal, I mean, Illinois is taking advantage. They got Terrence Shannon too. So you got to play the game, and it's all part of it.
Check it out. Also says, I'm excited about next year's team, mostly interested in effort and player development. If we get Riley, the Illini fans will get greedy real quick. Yeah,
We're
I
not
mean,
already.
we're there now. We are absolutely there now. Jay, thanks for checking in. With a portal now, do you even waste time on the 3-star kid? I would go hard after 5 stars and high 4-star players, and obviously use the portal.
I mean, I talked about that on whenever I was a guest on Locked On. I
Yeah,
said the strategy is to go hard on high 5-star kids. Then you maybe get a couple 4 stars, and then the portal is going to be your roster building for the rest of the roster. That's what you got to do. 3 stars, I think you guarantee one guy to get a roster spot
right.
just out of pure hopes that he develops into something. You look for some physical traits in there, and he's okay with sitting on the bench
Yeah.
because you need a couple bench guys to sit that's not going to cause a commotion every single time they're not in the starting lineup or playing.
Yeah, as you said, it's you can you can let the minor leagues develop 3 stars now. You can
Yep.
find out who's playing well, who's adapted to the college level from the high school level, because obviously not all 3 stars will. And once you've identified that talent, you kind of flex your muscle, you flex your NIL, and you get those guys into your program. Meanwhile, you use your assets to try to really lock down those 5 and 4 stars.
Yes, Sonny, this has been an unbelievable show. Tomorrow, I think, is when Josh Whitman and Illinois are releasing their mega plan for college athletics in the University of Illinois after the congressional change. I think that was what Josh Whitman wrote in his letter once the congressional thing got once the, pardon me, not congressional, the settlement got released. So I think tomorrow that's going to happen. And then there's going to be more schedule updates for Illinois football coming up, and Illinois basketball, always making news, always doing something. So we'll be following it closely. There's always something going on with the orange and blue, and that's what makes it different than pro sports is that it never truly ends, because once we're truly done with the transfer portal, then it's going to be summer workouts for Illinois football, and then we're starting the school year over again.
And whatever changes happen, we'll try to go live and keep you guys updated. So again, try to hit that subscribe button if you guys can. We're 5 away from 900 subscribers. We're the second biggest Illini channel out there on YouTube, Austin. That's crazy.
Absolutely.
But also, if you want to support me, if you don't mind, follow me at Locked On Illini, also on YouTube. That's growing pretty fast as well, providing daily Illini content. And as Austin talked about, he's already been on the show before, and he knows he's got an open invitation whenever he wants to come back on.
Absolutely.
So help us out. And I know it's been a while since we got on here live with the Illinicast, but it was bad time.
It was Memorial Day. I broke my hand.
Right.
So we'll be back doing this weekly at least, and maybe
Exactly
more
right.
than that if there's breaking news, as there always seems to be. Whenever Will Riley commits, we'll be jumping on. One of us will at least. So we'll be covering it.
Exactly right. All right, Austin. Anything else?
That is it. ILL.
I know.